Hi, my name is Quinn Mooney. I'm a practicum student here at the food bank, and today I am making smoothie for all customers who want to come up and check out this great event that we're doing. So I've been making a berry smoothie with strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries with a little bit of juice and some local tasty yogurt. So most of the items that we're using today are either as local or as regional as we could get. So yeah. Got some tasty strawberries. Hi there. Feel free to grab a smoothie. That's a berry one. I've got the recipe right there if you'd like to. Let's see. I'm doing both frozen berries and fresh berries, just so I don't have to use as much ice, which is pretty great. Yes, you're welcome. 3. And so super tasty. And then let's see.
So how much of each ingredient do you put in?
Okay. I did 1.5 cups of berries. So, no, I did 1.5 cups of fresh berries, 1.5 cups of frozen, and then I'm going to do about 1.5 cups of yogurt, too. And then, this is the last bit of my yogurt. We'll just add a little extra. You can't go wrong with yogurt. It's so good. It's a very simple recipe. It just takes 3 different ingredients, really. Fruit, yogurt, and some juice. So, hi there, I'm just making some smoothies. They should be done here. I am using cranberry juice, but earlier I was also using orange juice. So there's great options. I used 1 cup of juice. And then you just put it all together in the blender, and I usually go with liquefy. Sometimes you have to kind of stir up above it just to make sure all the frozen berries get to the bottom. And it's very short, very quick, and super tasty. Oh. You could just drink this as if it was juice, or you can take a spoon or use a straw. And here's a berry smoothie.
My name is Micah. I'm the program director at Montana Women Vote, and I'm delighted to be doing this Lunch and Learn with all of you today. This conversation is called Your Voice, Your Vote. We're going to talk about voting. We're going to talk about the best ways to raise our voices. We're going to talk about policy, we're going to talk about our personal stories, but we're a smaller group, so there's one thing that I want to do first, which is have us introduce ourselves. And then the second thing that I want to say, which is that because we are such a small group, if you have a question or something that you want to add to this conversation, I invite you to do so. Please feel free to interrupt me and say what's on your mind, or ask a question, or add a piece of your own advice to the conversation that we're going to have. I feel like we're a small enough group to where we can have a really robust and good conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll lead by example. Again, my name is Micah, and I'm with Montana Women Vote. I'm excited to be here. So why don't you just say your name and maybe where you're from, if Missoula. I'm imagining that a lot of us are from Missoula, but that may not be the case, so let's do that. I'm Micah, and I'm actually from Billings and live in Missoula.
I am Bonnie, and I'm from Olympia, Washington.
I'm Carmen, and I'm from Cedar Lake.
My name is Starlight from Browning. My name is Marina from Colorado.
My name is Katie. I live here in Missoula.
My name is Jessica, and I am originally from Great Falls, Idaho. I've lived in Missoula for a long time.
My name is Andrea. I'm one of those rarities. I'm not Missoula native.
Yeah, represent.
I'm Tiffany, and I'm from Missoula. I live in Missoula.
Hi, Tiffany.
Claudia, and I live out in Clinton.
Great, thanks for coming.
My name is Olivia Biwal, and I'm married to Karen.
Great, nice to meet you.
My name is Kathy, and I think I'm a native now, but I was born in Oklahoma. I hope I'm a native now, too.
My name is Patty, and actually grew up in Anaconda, and lived in Missoula now for over 9 years, and I'm happy to see so many people here.
I'm Rebecca, and I live here in Missoula.
I'm Jeannie, and I am also a Missoula native.
I'm Oscar, from California, in Missoula now.
My name is Dick. I'm a Wisconsin native and a Packer fan.
I love that Aaron Rodgers commercial that they have going on right now.
My name is Pam. I live in Missoula.
Great.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm originally from Western New York, but I've lived in Missoula almost 5 years.
I'm Stephanie, and I'm originally from Western Washington, and I've been in Missoula since 2000.
Lorianne Burhoff. I'm from Darby, Montana, but I've been in Missoula since 2001.
I'm Erica, and I'm originally from Connecticut, and I've been here since April.
Welcome.
I'm Madaris. I'm from Butte, but I go to school at the U of M, so I've been here 3.5 years now.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Part of the reason why I like talking to smaller groups about voting and politics is, one, because both of those things are really uncomfortable to talk about, and it's easier to do in a smaller group of people. And the second thing is because I sincerely believe, both from my personal experience and professional experience, that our stories as individuals and as participants in community is the most important thing when it comes to changing policies that affect our communities and our families and our state. I think it's really important to name where you come from and name your experiences and be able to take those things into a room and share them with other people. There is power in story, aside from what you just see in a library. There's power in having a story and sharing your story and leveraging your story in the political process. That's primarily what we're going to talk about today. I know that that's a little heady, so I have a couple examples of it. But that's what we're going to do. So as we go through and talk about how to raise your voice in the political process, again, I encourage you to interrupt me, share your story, and ways that you're thinking about using your story to influence our elected officials to support policies that really affirm the things that our community needs. So for a little context, I work for an organization called Montana Women Vote. We are part of the Montana Human Rights Network. We were founded in the early 2000s by a group of women who recognized that in our legislature, our elected officials felt little to no obligation to caring about or listening to low-income women and families and allies about what they thought about the policies that were being enacted. And honestly, folks, probably 80% of the policies that go through our legislature directly impact low-income women and families. So our staff, our organization, is comprised of people who either are currently or have been identified as low-income. Most of us have used a food bank services before. Most of us have used SNAP before. Most of us have experienced homelessness before. So these issues are really deeply personal to us. And owning our own personal stories is a key ingredient of how we approach policy, because we know what it means to cut healthcare access in the way that that looks to our families, because it's happened to our families. That's what I mean when I say sharing your story. Montana Women Vote is 2 full-time staff members. We have a couple half-time staff. We occasionally hire community coordinators to help us with our voter registration efforts, which is the core piece of what we do. It's voter registration in our own communities. But the vast majority of what we do is led by volunteers. It's people who own this work as their own because it's deeply personal to them. So again, that's what we're going to talk about today. So not to beat this almost dead horse, I think that your personal story is powerful and important. And I've seen it change policy outcomes in our state. And I'm going to give you an example. In the 2015 legislative session, when Medicaid expansion was going through the state, does anybody, can anybody, let's pause for a second. Who knows what Medicaid expansion is and why it was important? Yeah.
It allows people, for example, part of my work is gay, and that happens.
Yeah.
I work with people who are applying for disability benefits. A lot of these people, of their biggest problems in applying for benefits was they had very little or no medical records because they couldn't afford to go see a doctor.
Yeah.
With this expansion, they were able to get on the benefits despite the fact they didn't have kids in the house. They could get on benefits, go see a doctor, get those records they needed, and get on their Social Security.
Yeah, exactly. When the Affordable Care Act was passed, it was challenged at the Supreme Court, and the one thing that the Supreme Court said was not constitutional is a mandatory expansion of Medicaid in states. So, backing up a second. Medicaid is a program that is funded by the federal government, but it is enacted by the state. So it's technically a state policy that's run by the federal government. So in an effort to expand healthcare access to a lot of people, the federal government was like, there is this pool of money that you can have if you want it. Vote to expand your Medicaid programs and you will receive this pool of funding so that this particular group of people can have better access to health care. That's what Medicaid expansion is. So during the 2015 legislative session, Montana Women Vote and all of the partners at the Healthy Montana Coalition did a ton of work in the years leading up to that and at that legislative session to try and pass Medicaid expansion. It's important for us. I have family members that are covered under Medicaid expansion. I have people in my life that rely on Medicaid in order to get health care. And it was deeply personal to us and to our members. So we lobbied nearly every single day during that legislative session. Lobbying looks a little different to us, though. It's usually not my boss, Sarah, and I going to Helena and speaking on behalf of people. We drive carloads of people to go up and speak to their own legislators about what their experiences are. So there was one particular legislator from East Missoula in the 2015 legislative session that was not interested in expanding Medicaid at all. He had a lot of preconceived notions about the people who relied on Medicaid, about what it would mean to have those dollars for the program. It was really problematic. But every single week, a carload of women from East Missoula whose kids and families relied upon this service and needed expanded Medicaid in order to, just make ends meet and have access to health care, went up, pulled him aside and said, listen, this is why this is important to me. We're not going to talk about policy, but I am going to tell you about my husband. We're not going to talk about policy, but I am going to tell you about my experience of not being able to pay this emergency room visit. That's what we talked about. Every single week in the legislative session, a group of women went up and shared their story with him. On the last vote on the floor of the House, last opportunity for this person to stand up and do the right thing, this legislator stood on the House of the floor and said, I'm changing my vote. And I'm changing my vote because of the dozens of people from my district that have told me that this matters to them personally. And he voted for Medicaid expansion, and Montana was able to get an expanded Medicaid program in our state. That did not happen because a paid lobbyist went in and said, these are all the policy points of Medicaid expansion. His vote did not change because of economic reasons that were floated for years prior to Montana expanding Medicaid expansion. His vote changed because of the people who said, this matters to me. I genuinely believe that your personal story is the most important thing when it comes to impacting the political process. And that is just one example of dozens that we have of policies changing in Montana because of people's personal stories. I think that one of the reasons that your personal story is important is because accountability for policy comes from our communities too. Who here has driven on a road before or walked down a sidewalk? Who here has ever bought a fishing license?
Oh, yeah.
Right here. Who here has ever bought a hunting license or gone to a public school or had their kids go to a public school or used food bank services before? Those are all political issues. And I think that this is the sticky thing about politics, right? We often think that participating in the political process means arguing with your uncle on Facebook, right? And that's not what it is. If you ask anybody what they think about Russell Street, they're going to have an opinion. You know what I mean? You ask anybody what they think about access to food, they'll have an opinion. And everybody in this room has an experience of walking into a doctor's office. Everybody. Those are all political issues. And the best way to leverage policy towards something that is important and meaningful for our communities is for us to share our stories. So I propose to you 4 ways that you can lift up your personal story in both this political moment that we are in right now and ongoing, right? Your personal story is transcendent of whatever political party is in power. Montana Women Vote is a nonpartisan organization. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for today. We're not going to talk about the nuances of policy today, but I am going to tell you 4 ways that you can use your personal story to lift up the things that you care about and participate in the process in a way that is meaningful and feels good and is less about divisiveness and more about you and your family. The first way that I would propose, I'm wondering if anybody can guess. It's the most basic way that we participate in democracy in this country.
Tell your friends.
Vote. Register to vote, and then vote. The promise of participatory democracy is realized when we register to vote and when we vote. And in Montana, we have a pretty good voter registration system. Same-day voter registration is accessible to us. Registering to vote absentee so that your ballot comes in the mail and you can sit with it is available to us. And there's a lot of really good organizations across this state, nonpartisan organizations that aren't going to tell you who to vote for and why you should do it, but are going to tell you where candidates stand on issues or what issues are that can help facilitate that process. So if you have an opinion on roads in or around anywhere that you live, if you have an opinion on fishing licenses, if you have an opinion on your experience going through any kind of education system, then you are inherently a political person and your vote matters. It absolutely matters. Participatory democracy only works when we all vote. And, again, politics is difficult. It's not difficult because we can't get good things done. Politics is not difficult because we don't have the vision to think about what our world could look like if we did the right thing. Politics is difficult because there's dissonance. And the easiest way to participate in the conversation that is both deeply personal and also just about you is voting. Montana Women Vote puts out a voter guide every single year. Forward Montana has a good voter guide for this local municipal election in Missoula, and there's a couple other organizations that do voter guides as well that are nonpartisan. We do voter guides every other year when there's congressional and statewide races going on. So visit our website if you're looking for a voter guide next year. Visit Forward Montana's website if you're looking for a local municipal nonpartisan voter guide for this election. And if you have more questions about how to find information so that you can confidently cast your ballot, just grab me after this. We'll talk. I'll give you my information. I think that, I guess the last thing that I'll just say is that voting in Montana is important. There have been a lot of elections both in and around the Missoula area and in Billings, where I'm from, that have been decided by literally 2 or 3 votes. I think that there's a lot of disillusionment around the voting process and whether or not your vote matters, particularly in a place like Montana, and I promise you, in a place like Montana, your vote is vital. It decides races in this state. It decides ballot initiatives, and it decides funding in our state. So please vote. If you're not registered to vote, grab me after, and we'll get that done. Did you have a question?
Yeah, there's the local elections to me are the ones where I personally have the hardest time figuring out who to vote for,
Yeah.
judges, and things like that. You have that access. The statewide stuff you can find.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. For this election, again, Forward Montana has a really great local voter guide. There's also, the hard thing is that it depends on the amount of time that you have to research the issue, right? There have been a couple local groups that have held candidate forums recently that have been really helpful, really great ways to find out about, elected officials. And there has also been really good press coverage of those candidate forums. So if you look at, in particular, the Missoula Current, it's kind of a new publication in the last couple of years, or the Missoulian or the Independent, they're doing candidate profiles, and they're also covering stories of those candidate forums. And I'll also say, we live in a place of less than 70,000 people, right? Is it still less than 70,000? Does anybody know? 69? You think it's 70? Yeah, I think, yes, I think you're right. Like at or above 70,000. which means that we have unprecedented access to our local elected leaders. Your degree of separation, no, that's just fine. Your degree of separation between you and your local city council person is probably just one person, honestly. So if you have a question, if you can't find the information that you need about whatever race that you're trying to find out about, message them on Facebook. That sounds so weird, but you can honestly get a hold of them really easily that way. I have done that trying to get candidates to answer our own voter guides before. They will respond to your Facebook messages. Or a lot of them have campaign websites or Facebook pages for their particular campaigns. Use those resources to get answers to the questions that you care about. What's the second thing? Does anybody have an idea of what the second thing that I think you can do to share your story in the political process would be?
Now tell your friends.
That's going to be my fourth one, but we can do that now. No, let's do my second one now, actually. And the second one that I would say is call your elected officials about the things that you care about. Who here, particularly since the most recent election, has made a call to one of our congressional representatives or a local elected official? You have participated. Calling your elected officials is so easy. It takes 30 seconds, honestly, if you're leaving a message, and it really is super important. Having your congressperson, your senator on speed dial is a super easy way to voice your opinion. I'm not joking about that. It's a really easy way to voice your opinion, and it does matter. There are people who are paid to do tallies on who is calling in support of what. There are people who are paid to respond to and record the things that you say to our congressional delegation. There are people whose job that is. They are paid for that. So take advantage of those dollars that are being spent on those people and call them and tell them what you think. And honestly, folks, you don't need to know the ins and outs of policy in order to confidently make that call. That was a huge source of anxiety for me for a while, calling up a congressperson or a senator, because it's weird, right? It's this person who has a lot of access to power, who is in the news all of the time. They don't know me, I don't know them. Why would I call them? Why do they care about the thing that I care about? And you quickly discover that when you make that call, they just want to hear what you're thinking. They don't need you to rattle off all of the statistics and the 100 million reasons why the thing that you care about is an important thing to care about, but you know what they do care about? Your personal story. Your personal story is vital to the policymaking process. And our congressional delegation and people who work at the legislature, people who participate in the policymaking process, are always looking for folks with personal stories to talk about when they're on the floor. They're always looking for folks with personal stories that they can relate to and use as a reason to make and decide their vote. So never think that it's something that you shouldn't be doing. Every single one of our voices matters, and you should be calling your representative. Yeah?
Didn't you say your friends expect you to know more than when you call the senators or the representatives?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Than the senators or the representatives.
Girl, I get way more anxious posting something on Facebook than I do calling one of my congressional leaders, right? That is way more anxiety inducing than calling a representative, and it really does matter. Making your voice count, even just saying, I support this or I do not support this, you become one of those people from that person's state that is holding that elected person accountable to caring about your community, and that matters, and it's so easy to do it. I was going to bring a list of ways that you can contact your local representative and our representative and our senators. I forgot it, and I apologize.
You should look it up on your phone.
Yes, you can look it up on your phone. If you just,
There's one right there.
yeah, perfect. You can Google them.
Hi, everybody. There's one just before you get to the parking lot.
There.
There's what?
There was a representative. It used to be Max Fox's office, but now I think it's Danny Weaver.
Senator Daniels' office now.
And so it's just before you cross the street and get to the parking lot of the public library downtown. There you go. Ta-da!
Perfect. Who imagines what the third thing that I would say? Ways that you can share your story, participate in the process, make your voice heard. This one's a little not on the nose. That. You can do that. I think, well, you could. I would argue that maybe it's not the most effective way, but you can do that. You're welcome to.
And also, every time you see a billboard, Ask somebody for a sheet of paper and a marker and put your issue, whatever it is, there. Especially since you're not a millionaire, we're below the poverty level. The millionaires are the poor now, rich. So you put your name and your address and your phone number for contact there, and your email address if you want to or not. Because you can't trust email all the time because we know why. So you just put all of that right there. Keep it brief. Use lots of adjectives, some verbs, and keep it real concise so that way everybody says, okay, I get the point, and then they can take it with that and move on.
After you've done that, write a letter to the editor. That was going to be what I say, and that's a really great way to do it. 200 words or less, and a letter to the editor, because of the brevity required in the letter to the editor, is personal. It's not spouting policy points generally. It's about, hey, healthcare access is really under attack right now, and I'm worried about that because, or my kid uses CHIP, and I'm really worried about CHIP funding expiring. And I think that there's other people like me that are worried about it too. I wish our congressional delegation would do something about it. That's a letter to the editor. 2 points on letters to the editor. 1, the more personal, the more impactful. And 2, again, like calls to your legislator, there are people who are paid to read through letters to the editor every single morning and deliver packets of letters to the editor to our senators and our congressional leaders.
Of all the newspapers?
Of all of the newspapers. I had that job at one point. I did that. I was an intern for a senator. My job every single morning was clips, and I would go through and I would read all of the newspapers, and I would cut out things that either mentioned that senator or mentioned an issue that our senator was looking at, and I would put them all together, and I would scan them, and I would email them off to Washington, D.C. That was my role every single morning. It was also really intense. There's a lot of people who are directly impacted by services. And if you want to raise your voice in a way that is really public, aside from just calling your legislator, writing a letter to the editor is a really easy, great way to do it. And God knows that there's a lot of things that all of us could be writing letters to the editor about right now. It is one of those things that requires a little bit more time. It's a little more time intensive than just calling your senator and saying for 30 seconds, hey, I really want you to vote the right way when it comes to healthcare access, right? It requires a little more of you. It's also a little more personal. And if you want help writing a letter to the editor, if you're feeling compelled to write a letter to the editor, call me and we'll sit down for coffee. I'll bring my laptop and we'll write your letter to the editor together. We do that a lot. There's a lot of folks who are participants and members of Montana Women Vote that are regularly writing in the Missoulian, in the Gazette, in the Tribune, telling folks what their personal experience with the policies are. And it matters, and they read them. I promise you they read them. Fourth and final thing that you mentioned. Do you want to kick this one off?
Oh, family and friends.
Yeah. Why do you think that's important, though? What makes you say that?
I have a father who's on the other political spectrum of myself, or just has some of those preconceived notions I don't agree with.
Same.
So the hardest thing for me to do is every time an issue comes up is I make myself try to talk to him and have us find common ground. And it usually takes me 24 to 48 hours because we kind of get into it a bit. But because we love each other, we always get there, and that's the thing that gives me
Yeah.
And, friends, I work less hard on them, but I work pretty hard on my dad.
Yeah, I hear that. I also have, my parents and I are not on the same page about politics, which is just fine. One thing that I would say is that, as with most conversations, like what are those topics that you're not supposed to talk about, right? Death, sex, money, politics, religion, right? Politics is one of those dangerous 5 things. I think that it is infinitely better to have that conversation in person. It is a lot harder to be angry at somebody when you have to have a face-to-face conversation with them. And also, when you're in person, that is the perfect time to say, hey, I think you should care about this because this impacts me really personally. This is deeply meaningful and could change things for me and my family. It is a lot more difficult to disregard somebody who is sharing a personal story about why a policy, something political, impacts them personally than it is to disregard a statistic that somebody is throwing at you. So as you go through and if you choose to advocate for anything political in your personal life, with family members or friends, I really encourage you to use those moments to express a need for empathy from those people. Empathy is the way that people end up moved in conversation, and that's not just about politics, right? That's just about being a person. And sharing why it's important to you personally is the best way to get that person to mull over that conversation over and over and over again. I will say, I was not born a political person. I was not, well, I was. We all were, right? Meh. But I had this mentor who recognized a couple things that I really cared about and would sit me down for coffee and we'd have conversations about it. I didn't realize they were a mentor in that particular moment. I didn't realize what I was doing was being politicized by this person. But she would share with me things that were meaningful to her, experiences that she had about access to healthcare, about reproductive coverage. And these conversations were sticky, not great in the moment, but I realized that I had opinions about those things. And having a space that was both empathetic and personal was key to me joining Montana Women Vote, right? Honestly, the reason that I work for the organization that I do is because of that conversation that person was continually inviting me into empathetically and asking me to think a little more deeply about policy and politics and my personhood and what those three things meant together. So those are the things. Register to vote, call your congressperson and put them on speed dial, also your state legislator, right? We have a budget crisis, they need your calls. Write a letter to the editor if you feel so inclined, and talk to people about the things that you're thinking about and what you're worried about, and do so in a personal way, because that is the thing that is going to move that person towards doing something also, right? There's strength in community, and community is much more easily garnered. It's a lot easier to lock arms with somebody who you know deeply and personally and as a person than locking arms with a statistic. Statistics matter, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to being personal advocates in our lives, those things are important. So to end, I have a couple things that I want to invite you to participate in, using those 4 key skills that we talked about, things that you can go home today or even after this luncheon between now and the next panel that you can call our congressional delegation about and raise your voice about. The first thing is healthcare. Who saw the news in the last 24 hours? And anybody want to tell us about what's going on with healthcare subsidies? Or want to take a stab at it?
It's like a roller coaster.
It is certainly like a roller coaster. Yeah. You want to go for it? No. Yeah, you.
Yeah, basically Trump was cutting the Medicaid payments to Medicaid. So it's going to increase the rates for people who are kind of in that in-between, like who don't qualify for the 100%, but aren't able to afford to really pay for it by themselves. So they can get these subsidies to help buy health insurance in the marketplace, but he's going to cut those, so that's going to be pretty hard for people who are already struggling to make it by. And then he also made it, the other part I'm not too sure about, but about letting groups of employers to work together to get health coverage, which I'm not too sure about, but I just read that it's going to increase the cost of health coverage for most people, because it's going to allow healthy people to get cheaper insurance rates that don't cover everything that the ACA says that you have to get.
Oh, I see.
And so people who are older or have more conditions are going to have to pay more, so the insurance companies can make up that difference.
Yeah, exactly. And the bottom line of that is that pre-existing conditions, all the debate that we were having about charging people more because of illnesses that they have or who they are, is back on the table. And it also means that insurance rates across the board are likely to increase. The one thing that I did hear this morning too is that a lot of health insurance providers were asked to budget for that likelihood. It's something that the administration has been talking about a lot over the course of the last 6 months. So they opted for 2 different insurance rates, one that accounted for this and one that didn't. But in all likelihood, insurance rates are going to rise. It is sort of an attempt at sabotage of the ACA, right? This isn't something that has to be done. It's something that was chosen to be done. So this is something that impacts all of us. All of us have used healthcare. All of us will need to use healthcare again. And healthcare access is one of those things that can really devastate a person's life. I'm certain that a lot of us have experience with family members who've needed access, who either couldn't get access or who had to make drastic changes in their lives in order to be able to afford the bills that were put in front of them. Those are the things that you should be calling your congressional representative about. Our senators and our representative need to hear from us about this, and it's vital that they hear from us about this. And I will say this one thing. Senator Tester has always been a champion of healthcare access in the state, and a lot of people ask all the time, like, I know that I should probably call Senator Daines, I know that I should call Representative Gianforte, should I still call Senator Tester? And I'll say that calls of encouragement are just as important too. Saying, hey, we know that you're taking a beating for supporting this, it matters, if that's something that you agree with. If you don't, you do you. But if you want to, I would encourage you to call all of them. Sure.
When I was in Denver, Colorado, back in 1991 to 92, one of the nice things he did, and I loved the mayor back then, I think his name is Mayor Webb, he could have gave lessons to all politicians. He was a beautiful black man that just cared. It was wonderful. Everybody had equal rights. Didn't matter if you were poor or rich. That's irrelevant. If you're in this country, and you can be shelterless, but you're not homeless unless you leave the earth. So, but he created a clinic called South Street Clinic. People that were homeless or travelers could come there, even their Denver General could come there and get medical anytime for free if you could not afford it. South Street Clinic helps you with rent deposit, first month's rent. They help you with prenatal, everything. And they get a tax bracket to all the physicians and nurses that go there. They're not prejudiced. We all do a number 2 the same. We're all born nude when we come into this world. Thank goodness our parents show up or make us orphans, And that's because that clinic is there. And Denver is a part of this country. Every single state can do this.
That is a story that you should call our representatives about and share. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about too.
Brewster was a black man that started his own barbecue sauce, and he generated so much money from getting a second oven. And his friends tell him he's deceased, but his children still do this. They do a national Denver, Colorado Thanksgiving for all the poor. They collect hats and coats and everything during the summer, and they help all the poor.
That's awesome. And those are the kind of stories that you should be sharing with our congressional delegation. If you have something that matters to you, you should call them and tell them why it matters to you. The second thing, before we go into question and answer, if anybody has questions and answers, is CHIP, Children's Health Insurance. This is another opportunity for you to call our congressional delegation, to write a letter to the editor, and to raise the alarm with your friends and family. Who knows what's going on with CHIP right now? Anybody? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Federal funding has expired for the Children's Health Insurance Program. Fun fact, 49% of births in Montana are covered by a combination of CHIP and Medicaid. 1 in 3 Montana kids relies on Medicaid services. A lot of them are CHIP recipients. This matters for Montana. A lot of us know kids who rely on CHIP in order to have health insurance. A lot of us may end up in the future having a family, and our kids will rely on CHIP in order to have health insurance. And those are things, it's an opportunity, it is a thing that we need to be calling our congressional delegation about. So it's another, just to add it to the list. The list is growing, folks. The list is quite large. I will say the list is always large. There are always things for us to be working on, but the list feels like a lot right now in this one particular month. The last thing that I want to encourage you to make a call about that is not federal, is actually about our state and our state legislature and the way that we fund services in the state, is our state budget. Who knows what's going on with the state budget right now? Yeah.
It's a bit of a crisis.
Bit.
Lower than anticipated revenue divided by expenses has triggered some automatic budget cuts across all departments. They're looking at proposed 10% on average cuts to all departments, impacting tons of important services through Department of Public Health and Human Services. So the option then is to call a special session and bring the legislature back together to try to pass some revenue enhancing bills to offset some of these costs. So urging legislators to come together to try to find some more balanced solution than just across-the-board cuts.
Yeah. The things that are being cut are things that are really vital to a lot of us. Things like caregiving services and services for kids. DPHHS has taken a huge hit in these across-the-board budget cuts. So if
your offices of public assistance, half of them in rural communities will be closed.
Yeah.
Half of what will be
The
closed?
offices of public assistance is where people apply for SNAP and Medicaid.
Yeah, will be closed. So when you make that call, my specific ask, if you feel so inclined and if this aligns with your values and your wants and your needs, is to call your local legislator. Find me after it. I can tell you how to find that person if you're not sure who that person is, and ask them to seriously consider revenue-raising measures that would offset the cuts that are needed in order to balance our state's budget. Because here's the thing, low-income folks and kids and people with disabilities should not be asked to bear the entirety of our state's economic downturn. So, 3 opportunities. 3. There's a lot of other things that you could be calling about. And as you think about how you want to advocate for the policies that matter to our communities, I encourage you to center your personal story. Center your families, center your life, center the things that matter to you, because those are the things that change people's minds. Again, our personal stories are the linchpin of how policy gets passed in this country. Participating in democracy is not about being the smartest person in the room. It is not about being the most eloquent person in the room. And it is not about being the person who has all of the statistics and all of the answers to every single political quandary. The answer to participatory democracy in this country is participation, and doing so in a way that is personal and meaningful. And we have 4 ways to do it now. What are they again? Let's list them off together. The first one is whoa, voting, vote, register to vote, and then vote. And there's a lot of opportunities and resources to help you go through that process if you're feeling nervous about it. Because God knows I certainly did. The first time I voted, I took a Montana Women Vote voter guide with me into the booth. So you're in good company in this room. What's the second thing that we can do? Call our legislators. Call them and call them again and call them again and call them again. Even if they care about the same things as you, call them and say, hey, I appreciate you caring about this. What's the third thing that we can do? That. And write a letter to the editor. Write a letter to the editor. Share your personal story in a way that you know is going to get on that person's desk. And that, again, gives you another platform to share your personal story. And what is the fourth thing? Tell your family and friends and center personal conversations as you talk about policy and politics. So that's all I have. Does anybody have questions, though?
If you get frustrated, meditate.
That. Do that.
Continue and be unison. We are the United States, not the divided states.
Yeah. Does anybody have?
It's so bad that when you leave a state line or a county, automatically try to make it another country. That's why we look like a weak country. It doesn't work that way. You know, women are women, men are men. We get it together, and that's that. God named this woman. I have to throw this joke in because I make jokes a lot. But God named this woman. So
Can you share the joke with me afterwards? I just want to make sure we have enough time for questions in case anybody hasn't. Okay.
So we go through our lives of our brothers, our uncles, our dads, and so forth, right? They have attitude. So when they're acting up, it's our job, even Donald Trump, when he has Trumpitis, and presidentialitis, say, whoa, man, slow down, you're messing up. Think again. And that's all you have to do through your whole life. Use common sense, morals, and values. It fixes the problem. Because our money has gone downhill, and we have to use common sense now.
Definitely for common sense. Yeah.
Question about the budget.
Sure.
Is it being claimed that it's a fire-related emergency because we had to spend so much money?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. The fire is certainly a huge piece of that. The other piece is that our budget projections are just not meeting what was estimated, and because we are a biannual legislature, meaning that our legislature meets every other year instead of every year, so they have to budget for 2 years, right? It impacts our state a little more significantly when our budget projections are off. We can't just come back together within the next 9 months and fix a problem. So a special session is looking more and more likely as we go forward. Another reason why it's important to call your local legislator. Yeah?
I should probably read the newspaper more, but are there any specifics that y'all know about why the income projections were off for the budget?
I mean,
the tax base didn't grow as much.
Right. There's also a lot of tax cuts that were made in the 2013 session. I think it was the 2013 session that really impacted our ability to raise revenue. It was, and that's probably one of the primary pieces of why our revenue is downturned, is because of these really intense tax cuts that were put into place in 2013.
Yeah. And I should read more too, but
sure.
How unusual is it for a special session to be
involved to address the budget?
I mean, to address a budget issue specifically, I'm not sure. But I know that Governor Schweitzer called one. I think that was a 3-day session when he called it last. And that's the most recent one that comes to mind for me. Anything before that, I was probably a tiny baby, let's be honest. Any other questions? Okay, so who plans on calling a congressperson later today? Yes! Who is interested in writing a letter to the editor? I know. I'll figure it out.
iPhone, come on, I don't have mine.
Yeah, no, that's true. Maybe what I'll do, if y'all are planning on sticking around, I'll grab a sheet of paper from Jessica if you want to put your email addresses down. And I'll send you voter guide information for this local election. I'll send you contact information for Representative Gianforte, Senator Daines, and Senator Tester. And I'll also send you a link for how to find out how to contact your local legislator. How does that sound?
Sounds
Okay,
good.
bear with me. I'll find a sheet of paper and a pen, and we'll make that happen.
Get the woman a paper.
Any other questions? Anybody have any other questions? Awesome. Thank you for sitting for an hour and talking about politics with me. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I appreciate your time, everybody. Thanks.
Listening session. This one's a little different than the previous ones I've had because this one's going to be focused on nutrition, the nutrition title of the Farm Bill. Oftentimes when we think about the Farm Bill, we think about production agriculture and how it's going to impact crop insurance and the EQIP program and those kind of things. When in fact, the nutrition program is a bigger program than the farm production side is. And so this is an important part of the Farm Bill. It is a part of the Farm Bill that helps people eat good food. Now, there have been efforts in the past to decouple the nutrition title with the title that deals with production agriculture. They have not been successful in doing that. I am sure that there will be attempts to do that in this Farm Bill coming up. I don't think they will be successful again, but Congress is very unpredictable, so one never knows. But one of the real advantages that you have when you put both titles together is you can get a voting bloc that will work together to get a Farm Bill passed that helps everybody in rural America and urban America. So it is great to be here today on this Friday the 13th for the 6th Farm Bill session. We have got an incredible panel, some of which I've been connected up with before, some of which are new to me, but incredibly talented. I am told by my staff that this may be the most talented panel we've ever had in the last 10 years, so no pressure. Okay? All right? And we're going to, and correct me, fellas, if this isn't the way it's supposed to be, but I'm going to introduce them, and then we'll go around. How many minutes are they given?
3 to 5.
That way I let them be the heavy, you see. 3 to 5. And then we'll kind of open it up for discussion and move on from there. But we've got Lorianne Burhop, sorry. Chief Policy Officer for the Montana Food Bank Network in Missoula. I am told that anything nutrition title, you know. Okay? So it's a very good person to have on a panel, I'll just tell you. Kim Gilchrist, who's the Food Access Manager for the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition, and otherwise known as CFAC, correct? Correct? Yeah. Where are we at? There we are. It's a local Missoula organization, develops and strengthens food systems, promotes sustainable agriculture, ensures that all have equal access to nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. And maybe the most important thing is they administer the double SNAP dollars, which I'm sure we're going to hear about more today. Jessica Allred, who is Director of Development and Advocacy for the Missoula Food Bank, right there. All right. By the way, this is your house.
This is our house. Thanks for
being here. Thank you very much for thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing us to be here, and that does earn an applause. Thanks for allowing us. And then Alicia Buchholz, correct?
Yeah, you got it right.
All right. The reason is because we have a Buchholz family in Big Sandy, Montana. Exactly. She is a Missoula resident, as a participant of the SNAP program, about working, going to school, and raising a family. And Alicia is here to give us the on-the-ground view of a SNAP program. So thank you for being here. Kate Gerard, State Director of the Montana Association of Women, Infant and Children WIC agencies. So thank you for being here. Reverend Donna Gleaves? Gleaves. Montana Association of Christians. Reverend, thank you for being here. Appreciate it very, very much. Lauren Birdradler, the only other guy on the panel, is the project manager for Agriculture and Research Management Plan of the Blackfeet Tribe, and Susan Kohler, who, if you're from Missoula, you know Susan. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Missoula Aging Services, has a number of programs that she deals with, but the big one is that Missoula Aging Services serves about 450 older adults each and every year. So we thank you all for being here. Thank you, Susan, and everybody else for being here. We will start out with Lorianne and just kind of go down the line. So
Perfect.
You're up.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Tester, for hosting the event, and thanks to Jesse and Justin for organizing. My name is Lorianne Burhop. I'm the Chief Policy Officer at Montana Food Bank Network. As the statewide food bank, we partner with about 140 local food providers and operate various programs throughout our state in our work to end hunger in Montana. But in this work, we see every day that we cannot do it alone, that the charitable food system cannot make up for the social safety net. Montana is an agricultural, food-producing state, and yet 1 in 8 Montanans live in a home that struggles with hunger. SNAP is truly our most important and effective anti-hunger program, and it makes an enormous difference for nearly 60,000 Montana households each month. 2/3 of SNAP participants in Montana are children, seniors, and individuals with disabilities. Nearly 40,000 low-wage workers in our state utilize SNAP to help make ends meet. That's 1 in 12 workers in our state. It supports our retailers, our local economies, bringing tax dollars directly to our grocery stores, our farmers markets, and our communities. SNAP provides a safety net for all of us, as most people are really one unexpected tragedy or a major life event away from needing a little help. SNAP is working. It does exactly what it's intended to do. It reduces hunger. When you reduce hunger, you have improved health outcomes, higher educational attainment, and increased productivity. The Farm Bill is an important opportunity to protect and strengthen this program, as well as other key anti-hunger programs such as TFAP, CSFP, and FDPIR. The Farm Bill provides security for our farmers and for our families, ensuring that people have the nutrition and the resources needed to get through hard times. The nutrition title demonstrates the national commitment that our country has made that no one in the United States should be hungry. As we head into Farm Bill reauthorization, we have a couple of concerns related to SNAP. The first is the need to protect the structure of the program. So SNAP works because it's able to efficiently and quickly respond to changes in need. We have clear national standards, we have federal accountability to ensure that the program continues to provide basic food assistance to those who need it. Any attempts to move SNAP to a block grant type structure would undermine the core of the program and turn back the progress we have made on reducing hunger in this country. We're also concerned about the issue of work and how it relates to SNAP. We can all agree that a good paying job is a key solution in ending hunger, but attempts to further restrict access to SNAP based on work misses the larger issues at play. Adults who are not working at least 20 hours per week are consistently targeted for SNAP restrictions. There are a few important things to recognize about this population and these proposals. So able-bodied adults without dependents who are not working already face a harsh time limit of receiving SNAP just 3 months in a 3-year period. This population is small. As I mentioned, 2/3 of SNAP participants are children, seniors, and people with disabilities. Most people on SNAP who can work, do work. For those not working, however, we cannot ignore the reasons and the broader context. An individual may work seasonally, as many jobs in Montana are. They may live in a community with a weak labor market, and finding work takes more than 3 months. And more often than not, there are additional barriers to employment, such as living with unstable housing, lacking transportation, or having mental or physical limitations. So making it harder for this population or any other demographic to access basic food assistance will not move people out of poverty. It will not move people into work because it isn't addressing the underlying reasons that they are struggling. So we urge you to fight to protect SNAP access for all vulnerable Montanans. In addition to protecting the program we have, there are a few quick ways that I'll mention that we could make the program stronger. We could look at benefit inadequacy. SNAP benefits are often not enough to access a healthy diet. Calculations are based on outdated assumptions regarding food budgeting and food preparation. Medical expenses are a significant burden for many households, but only senior and disabled households are able to count those medical expenses in their SNAP qualification. We could look at the minimum benefit amount, raising that to $20 or $25, which would have a huge impact for food insecure seniors in particular in our state. Bottom line is that SNAP is crucial to Montana. We urge you to work towards a farm bill that protects the program from any new restrictions or changes to its structure, and instead strengthens the program to make it work even better. And while SNAP is the largest anti-hunger program, it really does work in conjunction with the other key anti-hunger programs in the Farm Bill. And again, TFAP, CSFP, and FTPIR are also crucial to our state, and we urge strong support for them as well.
So thank you, Lorianne. And just a couple things I kind of want to touch on real quick, flesh out more. There's a push in just about every federal program to try to, I shouldn't say that carte blanche, but the fact is a lot of federal programs are talking about block granting to the states. Heard a lot in the healthcare debate with Medicaid. And you brought it up in your opening statement that there was a push to block grant SNAP. The folks who advocate for block granting say it gives the state more control and it's a lot better thing to do. Tell me why it's a bad idea.
Block granting is really risky. I know the idea of local control on its surface can sound like a positive idea, but what we've seen in past block grants, such as the TANF program, it really does limit the program and its ability to meet its core function. So often that block grant isn't sufficient to meet the need, especially if there's a change in need, if there's a recession, if there's a disaster, and you need that program to be able to respond quickly and efficiently to meet that increased need. If you have a block grant, you're kind of out of luck, you hit that cap. Also, it really opens the program up to changes at the state level that would diminish its core purpose. So with block grants, states have more flexibility with that funding, and it becomes very easy for them to want to divert that money towards other programs or other areas that may meet some broad classification that Congress gives them, but it takes away from that core purpose of the program, which is providing food assistance.
Okay, got it.
So states have an incentive to make eligibility harder to then move that money to other places.
Okay. And so, and lastly, you said 1 in 8 folks
Live in food insecure
live in
households.
food insecure households. How many of those folks, let's see, that's about 12.5%, right? About that?
Yep.
How many of those folks have access to, they all have access, how many utilize
So it's
SNAP?
about 120,000 people participate in SNAP in Montana currently. And they're two separate surveys, so it's hard to say exactly of those 1 in 8 Montanans how many
That's
are on
pretty
SNAP,
close.
but it's around the same proportion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kim,
Great, thank you.
you bet.
So my name is Kim Gilchrist and I work for CFAC, the Community Food and Ag Coalition. Like Senator Tester said, our work is focused on rebuilding a sustainable local food system in western Montana. And so we have 3 program areas that focus on different pieces of the food system. So that's protecting farmland, providing resources for beginning farmers, and then market development. And as the food access program manager, I work on the market development side of things. And because a core tenet of a sustainable food system is that it must also be equitable, we really focus a lot of our market development work on meeting the food needs of people who have trouble accessing healthy food. And in our work, we've seen that low income is the main barrier to being able to access that healthy food. And so back in 2015, CFAC and a number of other organizations in Missoula started the Double SNAP Dollars program. And this program doubles the purchasing power of SNAP at participating retailers. And those include farmers markets, CSAs, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and small retail grocery. So So for example, if somebody were to go to the Missoula Farmers Market this Saturday morning and spend $20 of their SNAP benefits, they would receive a bonus, an additional $20 that you could use on fresh produce. And so currently in Montana,
So just stop, just real quick.
Sure.
So they can get an additional $20, and that money is specifically to be used on fresh produce?
yes.
Okay?
And currently in Montana, we have 11 locations that are offering double SNAP dollars in western Montana under the double SNAP name, but there are more across Montana that are offering SNAP incentives under different names. And we came into this work because there's a number of studies that were conducted in Missoula and are backed up by studies nationwide that say people really want to eat healthier and they simply can't afford to. And more recent studies are showing that if folks can afford to buy produce, then they do. And we're seeing that here in Montana with the double SNAP program. Hundreds more Montanans are increasing their intake of fruits and vegetables. And one of the pieces of feedback that we hear most often from double SNAP customers is that not only are they really thankful for the opportunity to afford more fruits and vegetables, but the opportunity to afford the quality of produce that they would prefer to eat and normally can't afford. And usually they're referring to it being fresh, local, and or organic. And I think that's a really important story to share because it sort of goes against what the typical stereotype or preconceived notion is of what people buy with their food stamps. And then with the double SNAP program, that's only half the story because the SNAP sales and incentives are going directly to small scale farmers and small food businesses. So just to give you an example, last year there were 7 retailers that were participating in double SNAP, and most of them farmers markets. And on average, their SNAP sales increased by about 30%. And that equates to $100,000 that was brought into Montana communities between SNAP and double SNAP incentives. And that, again, is just 7 retailers that are only operating in a 6-month period. So you can see there's a lot of economic potential here, both with SNAP alone and then also with these double SNAP incentives. And so Farm Bill policies are really vital in supporting this work and the direct impacts that we're seeing. Of course, SNAP is one of the biggest programs, and it's extremely effective and really important in helping people to afford food when they otherwise couldn't. And on the farm side of things, many of the farmers that we work with say they really appreciate the opportunity not only for SNAP increasing their sales, but just to be able to serve more of their community with the products that they're growing. The other one is FINI, and I'm not sure if this is actually in the nutrition title or not, but so FINI is the Food Insecurity Nutrition Incentive Program, and it's a competitive grant program that was first introduced in the 2014 Farm Bill, and it focuses on funding programs like double SNAP. So we've been very grateful that in 2016 we were awarded FINI funding, and that really meant a world of difference to the impact our program was able to make. Once we received FINI funding, our program participation doubled. So that meant hundreds more Montanans were eating more fresh produce and more farmers were making more money. And the last thing I just wanted to say really quickly, because I would be remiss if I didn't, but there's a lot of small local food programs in the Farm Bill that really have strong direct impacts on farmers in our state. And so we are hoping that, or we're urging for this next Farm Bill to not let those small programs go by the wayside, but to keep investing in local food systems, keep supporting SNAP at or above its current level, and support FINI to at or above its current level from the previous Farm Bill.
Thanks, Kim. A couple things. You led off by talking about sustainable local food system, support them, and resources for beginning farmers. There is a beginning farmers component in the production side of the Farm Bill, which hopefully we can keep. The question is your support mainly through the double SNAP program, because a lot of these folks that they're using the double dollars on, or the extra $20 on, are actually local producers that are small farmers, beginning farmers.
For my side of things,
Yes.
yes, but we have a whole beginning farmer program area, and we receive money from the beginning farmer.
Oh, okay, good.
Development program, and through that grant, we've been able to help hundreds of Montana beginning farmers, which is actually more than we even knew were out there.
I would love to get those figures from you. You don't have to do them today, but I'd love to get them moving
Yes.
forward so we can do that. And then, and you may have said this and I didn't pick it up, the double snap dollars, are they able to be used only at farmers markets or can they be used anywhere?
They can be used, so right now we have mostly farmers markets, and then are you familiar with CSA? So they can be used on CSA programs.
Okay.
And right now we only have one retail groceries from Missoula Co-op, but they focus on sourcing locally.
Okay.
And if we were to ever, you can expand to more grocery stores.
Yeah.
We would still have a focus on local.
Okay, good. And so, and the final question, and we'll move on. If you're a SNAP utilizer, how do you know about the double SNAP program? And is it particular to Missoula or is it throughout the state?
It's throughout the state. So if you're a SNAP user, then ideally you've heard about the program from the Office of Public Assistance, through shopping at the farmer's market, seeing that it's available, other word of mouth. And there's no sign up, you can just come use your SNAP benefits and you get the double card. And then, what was the second part of your question?
Well, I was going to ask, how do you, and maybe you just answered it, how do you make people aware of it? The person who's selling the food makes them aware of it, or who? That there's another, that this program is available?
Oh, the program. So we provide information to the food bank that they provide to their
Okay.
clients. Be with the Office of Public Assistance so they know about the
Okay.
program.
So the
you
folks know.
asked, sorry,
Right.
you asked if it was particular to Missoula.
Right,
So we have 4 locations in Missoula that offer double SNAP.
right.
But there's also places, a farm down in the Bitterroot, in Polson, Whitefish, Columbia Falls, and a handful of other places in eastern Montana.
Okay, good. Then the double SNAP dollars are all private dollars, right? Are the double SNAP, the extra $20, that doesn't necessarily come from the federal government, does it? Or does it?
It's a partnership, so since we received FINI funding,
Yes.
that some of it comes from the federal government and then some of it comes from private foundations.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Kim. Jessica?
Thank you again for hosting this listening session at a food bank. We think that it's important to say that last year, the doors that we all walked through to get to this listening session, 1 in 6 people in Missoula County walked through for emergency food assistance. Hunger and food insecurity, we should talk about them as the public health issues that they are. I've got a lot of incredible, esteemed fellow panelists up here that will talk about numbers of SNAP. The FINI program, I think, is really important. Every single month, we do home deliveries to 550 homebound seniors through the CSFP program, which is also part of the Farm Bill. And I'm so excited that Alicia is here as well. Part of what I wanted to do today is put a lens on the conversation that we're having in talking about SNAP and what it does in people's lives. So my mom was a painter. She was an entrepreneur, owned a small business, and one day she fell off a ladder, and it changed our lives forever. My sister and I was about 7, my sister was 10, and we, for the first time in our lives, were in need. My mom is disabled, and she has been bedridden since that time because of the injury. And so we went through growing up varying degrees of poverty. And it was hardest, like I said, when we were new to need. We didn't know how to be poor, and I will say that being poor is hard. There was a crisis in our lives that my mom was on a morphine pump and it ran dry, and there was this health crisis that brought the EMTs to our house, and with the EMTs also came a person who at the time I didn't know was a social worker, but definitely was there because a 9-year-old called the 911 to respond to this woman who was DTing from the morphine. And he took me through the kitchen, and he said, you must be so hungry from having dealt with this all day. Let's go and make you something to eat. And saw that there wasn't any food in the kitchen and said, you know, oh, is it like this all the time? Or is this just since your mom has been sick? And really was this catalyst in connecting us with this resource of SNAP. Before SNAP was in our lives, my sister and I would count out change and we would walk to the store and we would buy 19-cent bags of generic microwavable popcorn, and that is what we would share for dinner. And after SNAP, we got to have adequate food. It was the difference between microwavable popcorn for dinner and beefaroni. And some people might snub their noses at beefaroni, but I will tell you, it is where it's at. You know? I share this story I share this story because I think that when we talk about nutrition programs, we talk about numbers, and we talk about percentages and how many people, and we do that when we share our story of the food bank too, but we also have 21,000 stories just like that walk through our doors every single day. Half of people who come to our food bank are on SNAP. So for 10,000 people in the Missoula community, SNAP is already not enough for an adequate diet. They're still seeking at least once a year help from our local food bank. I think it's also a place to start talking about the way we talk about nutrition assistance and other social safety net programs. So when our elected officials use these programs as a way to balance the budget or as a way to say that we're saving money and demonize people who really just need an adequate diet, we are starting from the top down in Washington stigma and shame for utilizing programs that are working the way that they should and are making the difference for kiddos and for seniors and veterans and military families. My sister is a doctor, and I get to have the privilege of working for Missoula Food Bank. Neither of us have used social safety net programs as adults, with the exception of the student loan program, which, let's be real, you have to pay those back. So I want to say that SNAP is incredibly important. We see so many Missoulians through our doors every day. That is the same across the state. But let's remember that when we talk about these programs, we're talking about people.
Well, Jessica, thanks. And thanks for your story, which is powerful in and of itself, and like you say, it could be replicated thousands of times throughout this county alone. I guess the question I have is there a concerted effort by any group out there to try to get those stories, that information, to people that serve in the Senate and people that serve in the House? Because I think it's really important. You were exactly 100% correct. We tend to talk about numbers and not people when those numbers directly affect people. So how can I help you get your story and Alicia's story and everybody else who has a story back to the policymakers?
Yeah, I think that we have a really concerted effort here at our food bank and just empowering other local service providers around the state to do the same. I think that in Missoula, we oftentimes here locally have sympathetic local legislatures. Getting in front of some of the rest of the people in the state, I think, is important as well. But we will try here to be better at that, and certainly to empower others.
Well, you've got a couple of roadblocks, and that you're dealing with folks who are having a hard time putting food on their table.
Right.
So I can't imagine that they probably have broadband in their house and they're paying money for that.
Yeah.
And so they don't have access to a computer, probably don't have one, and if they did, they wouldn't have access to broadband. So if there is some way that we could get these folks to maybe the library to be able to utilize those resources, and the internet addresses are really easy. It's
just helping people. Are you suggesting that we help people connect through?
Correct. True story. And just tell their story,
yeah,
and send it in an email. I would say send it via letter, and if that's the way it works the best, go ahead. But the thing about emails is they're immediate, and they don't have to be pushed through any radiation machine.
Gotcha.
They're right there. And because I just really think your point about Number one, there should not be a stigma with hunger. It should be looked upon as, you know, the richest country in the world should be doing a better job. And if there's some way, and like I said, stories are powerful. Yours are powerful stories. So thank you very much, Alicia.
Yeah. So I'm not much different in my stories from Jessica there, but I'm looking more towards the future because I am going to be graduating from school. So my story is going to go a little more that direction.
Excuse me.
So I'm a single mother of 2 boys, ages 13 and 4, and I go to school and also work part-time. And I have received SNAP benefits since 2015. Without them, I would not have been able to go back to school so I could work to provide a life for my children outside of poverty. So in May, I'll get to graduate with my bachelor's degree in social work, I'm very excited about. And upon graduation, with some luck, I can anticipate earning around $32,000 a year. And when you take taxes out of that, that's about $27,662. Now to break that down per month, we're looking at $2,125. Now, a 2-bedroom apartment here in Missoula averages $900. And then childcare for 1 kid runs approximately $626. Don't worry, I'll do the math for you.
Thank you.
And then according to the USDA food plan, I should be spending $576 per month with my family of 3. And that's actually considered the low cost plan. There's one below that, which is just ridiculous, and then there's a couple above that. Now, with all these major bills paid, I'm left with $23. And I think most of us could think that an income of $2,125 a month is considered like a good job. At least I thought so until I started doing this math. So with that $23, I still need to pay utilities, gas for my car, phone bill, internet bill if I'm lucky enough to do that, student loans, and then household items like laundry soap and toilet paper. Not to mention the fact that I haven't even begun to take out premiums for health insurance if I get to qualify for that. And then buying clothes for my kids, impossible at this point. So just to move on a little bit, last semester I did a speech on the advantage of having the Double SNAP Dollars program here in Missoula. And one of the articles I read while doing research defined food insecurity as lacking sufficient quantity or quality of food. So it's not just about how much, it's about what is. Now, and we all know that children who experience food insecurity run the risk of being sick more often, having mental health issues, and having cognitive delays, as Lorianne pointed out. Now, for my family, having access to SNAP means my kids don't go hungry, and they have quality food so they can nourish their brains and bodies, and increases their chances of succeeding in life. So we can break that poverty cycle, hopefully. Now, 2 summers ago, I got to work with Kim at the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition to raise awareness about the Double SNAP Dollars. And there I learned firsthand how important it is for children to have access to the nutritious food. And I know that CFAC has worked diligently to make locally grown food available for low-income families and our surrounding areas here in Missoula. And this program has made a huge impact, not only on the local economy, but me as well, being able to provide those local nutritious food for my family. And Kim talked about the economy impact that it has there, so I won't go too much further into that. But cutting funding for SNAP benefits means cutting funding for the Double SNAP Dollars as well. And it also means taking food out of my children's mouths. So I just encourage you to fight tooth and nail to keep funding for SNAP so our children can have access to not only enough, but quality food. And then organizations like the CFAC can continue their hard work.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Alicia. Just so the folks here know, the President's budget eliminated nearly 50% of the SNAP funding. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that the House and Senate get to work it over and hopefully get that number back to a reasonable amount. The bad news is that the House is actually got propositions on their books to actually do more than a 50% cut to SNAP. The good news is hopefully the Senate will have the overriding hand on that and will do the right thing. So it's a good news, bad news situation. I guess, and look, I am entirely into local food. I'm part of that, to be honest with you. I think we raise a lot of really good food in the state, and there's no need shipping it somewhere else and then shipping it back again. It's a waste of resource. But the question I have is that, and in the farmer's market, it's easy because, you know, you see the guy that's got the Swiss chard, and you know that Swiss chard was raised here. Is there any opportunity to educate folks as far as the more like in wintertime when there isn't farmer's market? Is there any opportunity to educate? And that could go to you too, Kim, if you want. But because I think it's really important that quality food's important. I mean, you can eat junk; it doesn't do you any good.
Right. Well, and I know, like you said, you know, you're all about local food, but a lot of people think a vegetable is a vegetable, right? Well, when that vegetable travels thousands of miles to get to you, it's lost a lot of its nutrition. And then you're also taking and putting that money back to wherever it came from.
Right.
And so, you know, working with CFAC and learning how having this Double Snap Dollars program works not only for helping more nutritious food, but also keeping that money in the local economy is huge.
Yeah.
And in order for the winter stuff, I know there is a winter market. You're not doing that Double Snap there yet, are you?
They haven't been able to go through the process to accept SNAP yet, but they're working on it. And
You're up to bat next.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation. Kate Gerard, and I am actually the State WIC Director for the WIC program. And so unlike the other panelists, I am not here to have an opinion about this farm bill. I'm here to represent WIC and maybe shed some light on our program and then answer any questions when we get to that point about the difference or similarities between SNAP and WIC. So I'll just provide some high level, because this isn't about WIC today, I'll just provide some high level information about WIC, and then I'm happy to field any questions. So if you're not familiar with our program, we are the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. We are USDA funded like SNAP, but we are not in the Farm Bill. We're in the what's now called the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act, which is the Child Nutrition Reauthorization. Happens every 5 to however many years. Last reauthorized in 2010. So we have some things in common in that we're both supplemental nutrition programs. We have similar income guidelines in that we serve 185% of poverty level. WIC does count SNAP participants as what we call adjunctively eligible, meaning if they participate in SNAP and they are a infant or child under 5, a woman who's pregnant or postpartum, they sort of automatically qualify pending a health assessment. So that is one relationship between SNAP and WIC. We also count Medicaid, TANF, FDPIR also as adjunctively eligible. So we have a close relationship. We cross-refer very regularly because we know our participants. Our program average benefits is about $40 a month, which is not much for an individual to eat, as you can tell by Alicia's math. So we encourage folks to also apply for SNAP so that they can piece those things together and hopefully feed their family. We are different in that we serve that very specific population versus sort of folks across the lifespan. It's very much meant to be a time-sensitive program. We focus on a population that's in nutritional need, again, for a short period of time. And we also pick specific foods on the program to be eligible: dairy, milk, yogurt, cheese. We just added tofu, fresh fruits and vegetables, frozen canned fruits and vegetables, beans, peanut butter, whole grains, foods like that. So it's very specific. It's UPC based. It's very, very much enforced that the foods that we choose are received by the participants to meet very specific nutritional needs. I'm also a dietitian by trade, and that's how I came into working for the WIC program, and so I obviously believe very strongly in quality nutrition and the health outcomes that result from participating in programs like these. So far as numbers go, we serve about 17,000 participants across Montana every month. That's not great. We have a much higher potentially eligible population who choose for whatever reason not to participate. We could guess at why that is, but I think a lot of people don't participate in WIC potentially because they get SNAP, and maybe it's more flexible. Maybe it's a little easier to use because it's $1 based, and they can apply online and they can use it at the store. So it's a little bit different.
So back me up just a little bit, because maybe I didn't hear you. If they participate in WIC, they can't participate in SNAP?
No. They can participate in both, and we cross-refer, and we hope that they do.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, they automatically qualify for WIC if they meet our criteria and have SNAP.
And so, do you find that most of the 17,000 a month that you provide services to are also involved in SNAP?
We believe many are. We don't have.
Oh, but you don't have the
We don't
statistics.
have data. We don't have access. Well,
Yeah.
we haven't compared data.
Right. And so now I'll ask you a really tough question. Healthcare outcomes are a hard thing to measure because you got to know where you've been to know where you're at
Yes.
and where you're going.
Yes.
How do you measure?
That's a really good question. Prevention is very difficult to measure. We find that in public health. The National WIC Association does put data sheets together, and they do look at a lot of evidence-based studies and try to put some data points together to show health outcomes based on who participates in WIC and where they end up. It's not an exact science, but it is thought that participating on programs like WIC will reduce the rate of prematurity, birth weight.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Increase iron levels, increase breastfeeding rates. So we do track some health statistics like that in our program, and I think we could do better with data, but we do what we can.
Well, thank you. Thanks for what you do with the WIC program. It's a great program that does some really good work, and it only does good work because we have people like you on the ground, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Reverend, please.
Thank you, Senator. I am a deacon in the Episcopal Church, the Diocese of Montana. I am assigned to St. Peter's Cathedral in Helena, and I serve as a member of the Council of Montana Association of Christians, and because of that, I represent MAC on the Partnership to End Childhood Hunger, affectionately called MONTPEC. I'm also a longtime advocate for people with disabilities. I have a son with multiple disabilities who is a SNAP recipient at the bottom end of that totem pole. He gets very little. He works about 4 jobs and does lots of volunteer work and is very active in his community, and does his best to contribute to our wonderful economy. The Old and New Testaments of the Bible speak to caring for the poor, the hungry, the widowed, the orphaned. That's what we're about as Christians and as folks who follow the Bible from whatever faith tradition. Food is a basic need for all people, and yet 1 in 8 Montanans, including 45,000 children, live in homes and struggle to keep food on the table. I did a little research because of my disability interest and found a paper from the Center on Budget and Policy that gave some statistics from 2015, so it's not as current as I would like. But 13,000 households in Montana with non-elderly members with disabilities receive SNAP benefits. That's a significant number of people in this state. It's 24% of the total number of SNAP households at that time. The average monthly benefit per household for members with disabilities was $185. Now, I don't know how many of you make regular trips to the grocery store, but that's not going to get you very much.
Nope.
While most faith communities support and or offer food pantry support, what we can offer is nowhere near what this community and this state and this country needs for individuals and their families who need to have food security. SNAP is a critical benefit for those who are the most vulnerable among us. If we, in fact, are a nation under God, then it is incumbent upon us to care for those in need, as directed in Scripture, and not to abandon them with such devastating budget cuts.
Thank you, Reverend. I guess You represent a dynamic and diverse group of people in this state. And I know that as the Montana Association of Christians, they reach out. I mean, I get emails from either you or your group with some regularity. Right?
I'm not a quiet wallflower.
That's good.
Thank you.
And I think it's a group that has a perspective, and it has power in that perspective. And so, what more can we do?
Just stick with it. Raise as many voices as possible. MAC certainly advocates for these issues as well as other issues impacting people around the state of Montana. And I struggle, quite honestly, with the current climate and the reaction that I'm seeing in Congress and in the administration with how people who are vulnerable, people in poverty, people with disabilities, the elderly, are all kind of being thrown under the bridge, and it bothers me tremendously, and I'm not sure what to do about that, other than raise my voice a lot.
Well, that's good, and keep doing it. I mean, look, the poor, the widows, the orphans are, I mean, if we're a civilized nation, we should be dealing with those populations in a civilized way. And I just, if there's a way we can help empower your voice and magnify it, we appreciate your work.
Preach it, brother.
All right, thanks. Lauren Bergradler, you're up.
Thank you, and thanks again for inviting me to participate. I'm flattered. I do agriculture policy development for the Blackfeet Tribe. And so I'm in the process of putting together the agricultural resource management plan, which in layman's terms is the Blackfeet Farm Bill. And so in all the policy development that we do, we have to absolutely make three correlations. Otherwise, we're kind of missing the boat. And the first is how we utilize agricultural production to create sustainable economic development on the Blackfeet Reservation. In essence, that's how we invest in our private producers to actually create sustainable economic development. You can look at economic models all day and come to the conclusion that tribal enterprise-based, soul-based approaches just don't work. And so we want to kind of flip that on its head and actually empower our private producers to actually lead the way in creating sustainable economic development and a foundation for economic growth. The second is that if we're not thinking about how we narrow health disparities among Native people, then we're really missing the boat. Native Americans die about 20 years younger than their non-Native counterparts. And so when you think about those health disparities that exist, if we're not developing policy that absolutely makes that correlation, then what are we doing? So in terms of that piece, some of the things that we definitely are working on is how we can reintroduce traditional foods back into our diet. We absolutely know that with omega-6s, a high concentration of omega-6s and a lack of omega-3s, it's literally killing our people. And so we know that we can get omega-3 through grass-fed beef, through buffalo, through other sources that just currently aren't available to especially those that are in poverty. And so the other is the coordination of our food delivery systems. Like any other government, the budget process creates all of these siloed efforts. And so what we're working to do is actually work across these siloed efforts to actually coordinate our food delivery system. So our senior programs, the schools, the food bank, the USB, the FDIPR program, other food delivery systems. And then the last is that we want to absolutely be able to lower the median age of our farmers and ranchers. We know that farmers and ranchers' average age in Montana is 65 years old. In 1985, it was 50. And so, so we want to absolutely be making correlations to how we invest in our youth and instill that institutional knowledge back into our younger folks so that we actually can lower that median age of farmers and ranchers, certainly on the Blackfeet Reservation. Some of our biggest challenges exist in the misalignment of federal policies. When you think about USDA requirements for eligibility requirements for programs, they just aren't very aligned with trust land management policy. And so as a result, we eliminate a whole slew of producers that would otherwise be eligible under any other system here in the United States. And so, so some of those challenges, certainly that could be fixed in the Farm Bill, would be to align those eligibility requirements with trust land management so that more of our producers could actually gain access to the resources that they need. The other is that because we're dealing with, as farmers and ranchers on Blackfeet and other Native communities, the USDA and the Department of Interior, who certainly don't talk very much, we definitely need to find solutions that actually get them to the table to say, okay, well let's align some of these programs. And so in terms of recommendations that would really help us create sustainable economic development, narrow health disparities, and infuse institutional knowledge into our youth, would be the ability for tribes to actually compact some USDA functions. So if the Blackfeet tribe wants to invest in a beef processing plant that will process the grass-fed beef, because what is currently happening is that we raise them grass-fed, we send them to the feeder market, they then become contaminated, if you will. They become corn finished. And so if we could actually keep that stock, and we do put about 40,000 head into the market every year on the Blackfeet Reservation and actually finish them as grass-fed, we're much further ahead of the game. And so when you think about the ability to compact USDA functions, one of them absolutely is the inspection function. The other part is research. Not one ARS or agricultural research station is located in Indian country anywhere in this country. And so when you think about some of the most poverty-stricken areas or the most challenged economies, they happen to be in Indian country. And so we want the first ARS research station on the Blackfeet Reservation, preferably in Browning. The next is to help augment that effort. If we want to develop our own beef label with our tribes across the border, we certainly did proceed both the United States and Canada. We need the Canadian government to actually recognize the J Treaty so that we can move goods back and forth without tax or cultural items. So then if the Blackfeet tribe or our producers want to actually gain access to other markets or have the flexibility for international export, we actually have that ability to do so through the movement of our own Blackfoot Confederacy border crossing, ideally. And so, that would allow us to also diversify our agriculture profile. Currently, the Blood Tribe, just on the northern side of the border of us, already is doing Timothy hay manufacturing. They're already doing international exports. And so, if we want the ability to actually create that flexibility in trade, we absolutely need to be able to move across that border with our goods duty-free. And that would open some of our beef even to the British market, which currently isn't open to U.S. producers. The next part of that is that we need market protection for native foods. We've seen exploitation throughout our history, whether you're talking about the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry. We need market protection for our foods. And under the current policy or under the current laws, that isn't available to us, whether you're talking about patent, trademark, anything along those lines. The next would be to, again, align those eligibility requirements for trust land management. When you think about USDA eligibility requirements. And then if we're really serious about empowering Native tribes to actually create sustainable economic development, we have to exempt matching requirements. Matching requirements under rural development, under value-added programs. I mean, if you're going to really create or build an economy or allow a tribe to build its own economy, we need to first be able to have that opportunity to access those resources. And so those matching requirements are currently eliminating another whole slew of native producers. And then finally, we need to fully fund tribal extension programs. The critical work that they do in 4-H, and I think about Blackfeet 4-H, for the third year in a row, we've had the highest average sales in the state. Our hogs this year went for an average of $8 a pound, 8 times the market value. Our beef went for almost $5 a pound. And so we need to continue to invest to certainly supplement that third criteria or that third correlation in terms of investment in our youth through our tribal extension program. So the FERTEC program needs to be fully funded. Right now they split it up between all of these different tribes, and so by the time you actually get your little piece of the pie, it's exactly that, a very little piece of the pie. And so those are some of the things that would really help Blackfeet producers and the Blackfeet tribe actually move ahead in those three areas, in sustainable economic development, in the narrowing of our health disparities, and in enriching our youth to actually carry on that agricultural tradition.
Thanks, Lauren. It's a long list, man.
I do know 140 pages.
That's pretty good. So, I just want to talk about and by the way, we could spend the next 5 or 6 hours just on what you said here real quick. But market protection for your food, are you saying that right now, if you wanted to put a made in Blackfeet Nation label, that you can't do that?
No, that's not what I'm saying. So when we think about, say, choke cherries, our traditional foods, right? We absolutely know that we're beginning to make correlations through research that choke cherries are instrumental not only in diet and nutrition, but also in some cancer prevention, and even some cancer treatment. And so what we've seen in the past is anytime that you see any of those traditional foods that you normally utilize, once you make those discoveries, then they become exploited. Right, you know, so when you think about, and I'm not sure how that could look at the end of the day, but when you look at or think about market protection, there's nothing that there currently isn't anything available that would allow you to protect that valuable resource that that certainly should be available to all.
I'm going to put your land down. I got it. And then right now, as far as and I know you guys have been talking about putting a packing plant up. In your neck of the woods, inspections cannot be compacted, is what you're saying. Meat inspections cannot be compacted at this point.
There's nothing that says that they can't be.
But they aren't.
Right. But to navigate the process is a mundane process, and so if there's actually a directive through the Farm Bill, then it becomes much easier to accomplish that.
Okay. And then the last question, because I never heard you talk about this, and you may have, I just didn't hear it. Is there any effort on Blackfeet to make sure the food that you raise stays as Blackfeet as needed? And can you tell me about that?
Certainly. So when we developed the policy around utilizing our own delivery systems, and a lot of the models that we have benchmarked are really tribal enterprise heavy, and they don't make the correlation to actually private production. And so we want the ability through policy development, we absolutely want to be able to steer that food back into our own food community systems. Because currently what is happening is that processed foods are killing us. They're killing our children, they're killing us. When you think about the obesity rate, everything else, processed foods are killing us. You go to any young person's freezer, you open it up and it's all boxes. And so part of that is also through WIC, through SNAP, the ability to actually create demonstration kitchens that actually teach our children how to cook again. Right, because right now all they right now all they do is push buttons, right? But getting back to the question that you asked, when we think about those three correlations in terms of policy development, if we're not thinking about how we get all of our locally produced food back into our food delivery systems, then we're missing the boat. So a part of that is actually the ability to create your own food policy. Right, USDA has its food policy, so if we create a Blackfeet food code that actually allows us to define safety standards for commercial agriculture production, then our producers can become Blackfeet certified rather than the expensive process of becoming state certified to actually become suppliers for all of those food delivery systems.
Thanks, Lauren.
Absolutely.
Susan.
I'm going to assume you chose me last because of the statement, the best for last.
Exactly. How did you know?
I just kind of felt that. Thank you. Thank you for having this listening session and giving an opportunity to talk about the impact of USDA on our older adults. Missoula Aging Services' mission is to promote the independence, dignity, and health of older adults and those that care for them. we're part of a nationwide network of area agencies on aging. We choose to do business by the name Missoula Aging Service, and our service area is both Missoula and Ravalli County, in which we contract with the Ravalli County Council on Aging to do similar programs. I heard you say something about we serve 450 some, actually we serve over 20,000 older adults and people who care.
The record stands corrected.
Yeah, I just thought I should mention
Yeah.
that. I made that note.
It's a little
I was
difference.
thinking about it.
It's a little bit of difference.
Yeah, huge difference, and that's just for Missoula County. We receive USDA funds through a couple of sources. One of them is the the Missoula Food Bank calls the ROOS program, and Ravalli County provides that same service in Ravalli County through the Ravalli County Council on Aging. And that's about is $57,000 worth of support, financial support to provide those boxes of commodities and other foods for older adults that are income eligible in Ravalli County. Missoula Food Bank takes care of the people here in Missoula. And then we also have the program, the commodities program through USDA, and that's statewide, that's access. Missoula Senior Center and a couple other sites use commodities for their meal programs. And then there's also cash in lieu of commodities, which you get paid cash for every eligible person who receives a meal through the nutrition programs, like our congregate meal program.
Who gets paid the cash?
Pardon?
Who gets the cash?
The organizations that are serving the meals.
And how is that determined?
How's that? It's
Is it so?
eligibility, when it says ineligible
Yeah,
meal.
I got you, but is it so much a meal?
Yes.
X number of dollars per meal? Gotcha, okay.
And then the other program is the Farmers Market program. Missoula's probably has the highest utilization in the state. Last year we served 515 older adults that had packets of coupons worth $50 that they could take to the local certified farmers market and purchase fresh produce. We had a little lower utilization. It's not over quite yet for this year because of the smoke. They can have proxies, but people in general weren't going out to the farmers market because of the smoke.
Right.
So that has been a growing program. And in the past, the 500 coupons that we have given out is about a $25,000 value for just the farmers market and supporting local farmers in fresh produce. So those are some of the ways that we utilize under the Farm Bill to help support older adults. And I think it's important to realize for the audience too that the state of Montana is predicted to be 5th per capita in our country of older adults. So it's not a small portion of our population. And many of those people are relying on Social Security only, and the average income on Social Security is $12,000. So you can realize they're not at a point in their life where maybe they're going to go back to work. And so they really, and we aren't seeing increases in the COLAs for Social Security.
Correct.
So they're losing ground in that regard. So food insecurity is becoming more and more issue for them. And then when you talked about SNAP and the minimum amount, a lot of older adults don't want to go through the hassle of the paperwork to get a minimum amount of $20 or something. They just assume go without. I can understand that. I too have a son with developmental disabilities. He's 27 years old. He gets SNAP. I don't know how he would survive without it. He's SSI, which is only $735 a month. He probably makes maybe $50 a month by working with programs at Opportunity Resources. He also pays for a part of his dad's health insurance. His insurance through his dad's health plan, in order to supplement his Medicaid. And there was a judgment made by SNAP saying, well, he's Medicaid, why is he paying for more health insurance? Well, we all have read in the paper the position Medicaid's in right now, and he has health care issues that would be reliant on that. But it takes more money of that little bit of money to do it. And so, you know, they wanted to reduce his SNAP because of the fact that he was paying a little more for his health insurance. And I don't know how anybody can say that system can get abused, because I'll tell you, it's a lot of work to keep them eligible and going back and sitting and making phone calls and being on hold for 2 hours to get that system to, I can't imagine, because I know as a parent, it's a full-time job just to keep the eligibilities intact and the communication going. So it makes it hard to understand how the people in Washington, with the exception of you, are not understanding or have this belief that there's this huge amount of abuse to a system. I've heard the comments that with SNAP, you know, well, it went, you know, it doubled, tripled, you know, back in 2008 when we were going through a recession. And so you would think now that the recession's over, it would go down. Well, the utilization is going down, but apparently not as fast as some people think it should be.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do about that. And with older adults, you know, we recognize just because you're 60 and older, it's multiple generations. We're dealing with people like that are 100 years old, and they may have had an adequate income when they first retired, and it's no longer adequate. So I think the food insecurity is a big issue, and with our current old generation, it's also a pride issue. And wanting to get that kind of support, not letting anybody know they're in that position, and they always want their grandkids to get it before they do. So taking a little bit more of that stigma away, taking that minimum level up a little bit for SNAP. Farmers Market, talk about utilization and canning. Current older population gets it, but they have time. We have to remember why we have boxes in the freezer, because while mom and dad are working, and to sit down and do canning and things like that is a major commitment of time. I think we need to look at how we can have more healthy foods that are convenient, but when they're healthy, they cost more. And how can we help people who are older adults or young people get those healthier foods and help support that for their nutrition.
Thanks, Susan.
Sure.
I appreciate it. We've taken longer than I figured, but that's okay. We've got a lot of good information. I'm going to do about 3 questions from the crowd, if I could. And I know that's not enough, but we've got it. So we'll start over here. We'll start with the lady in the front row, and then we'll go to the gentleman, and then one more. Go ahead.
Okay. One thing that I noticed that the budget committee has to understand in Washington and New York and every state capital is that even though benefits may increase, all of the merchants and the people that drive the semi-trucks, which now are going robotics, and they're still more expensive, but when all that increase of their pricing of what they have to do to make sure it's packaging, and some of the plastic packaging is got chemicals in it, it's really bad. When all that takes consideration, no matter how much you raise a grant or benefit for a low-income person, there's no budgeting. So will there be better schooling for the accountants in the near future to help them understand that every state has different budgeting? So we've turned into the divided states more than the United States. So will the accountants be able to have a situation like this?
I think that the key is to get the good information. If you get good information, you make good decisions. If you get limited information, your decision's not going to be near as good. And sure, I would love to think that, but it also depends where your priorities are. I think you said it the best. I mean, if your priorities are based just simply on dollars, truthfully, you can make those dollars say anything you want them to say.
Right.
And if it's based on people, that's real. So, yeah. Sir?
Yeah, it's a great segue. You talked about getting the good information, and the annual SNAP budget is in the range of $70 billion a year. It's a lot of money. It's a huge chunk of money that we don't know really anything
independent ballot. Congress doesn't release, or the U.S. government doesn't make public where those expenditures go. There was a study released about a year ago that's sort of been the most comprehensive that found 20 cents of every SNAP dollar goes to sugar-sweetened beverages. So there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of retailers who are being subsidized by the program, but that knowledge isn't being public to researchers, to people, to nutritionists, to folks who are trying to leverage SNAP for what it is, which is the nutrition assistance program.
Sure.
So what I would like to see is just, having access to the data that's there. It's just not.
I am 100% with you. I think that transparency in government, regardless, is a good thing, and I think in this area it's particularly good. And I didn't know that wasn't for public information. I don't know why that shouldn't be public information. We'll see if we can get it out. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. One more. Oh, wow, easy crowd. Ma'am.
I was just curious, Mr. Brenner, is there still a discrepancy in testing between Canada and the United States? Is that
Okay, you're going to have to speak up. I didn't hear. What did you hear?
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to know, is there still a discrepancy between cross-border sales between Canada and the United States for testing for things like mad cow disease?
I don't know. I can tell you there are discrepancies between the on the northern border on testing and what you can move across, but I don't know as it applies to mad cow. I don't know.
Is that a barrier, would you say?
Could that be a barrier? It absolutely could be a barrier, but it may. The problem is I don't know, and I can find out if I get your name. I can find out and get back to you on it and let you know. Well, thank you all. I've just got one question. It's a kind of a general question. Not all of you have to answer it, but I was going to ask Susan, and I thought, no, I'll save it and make it more global in nature. And that is, you said, Susan, you serve 20,000 folks here. The SNAP program, I think was, you said 120,000 within the state. What are the needs out there compared? Are you pretty much meeting the needs now, or half the needs?
Just for nutrition?
Yeah, just for nutrition now, and then you can elaborate on other areas too if you'd like, because I know you will. And I want you to.
No, yes, and no, I don't. I mean, and part of it is nutrition is a very, very important for a person's existence, obviously, for all kinds of health reasons. And we want to invite people into that. What happens in the older population is that the longer they're retired, the chances of social isolation comes about. And we have to raise in Missoula $100,000 at least a year in order to serve everybody on our Meals on Wheels program. So obviously we're not getting enough. Not that it should be 100%. Right. But it's not. We're not getting any increases really to speak of to meet what is already proven demographically to be a fairly significant part of the population. And not that all old people are old and poor or frail. It's just that if you can take a percentage of that to a larger number, there are more and more. Gotcha. So no, and then in terms of other services, it takes an array to help somebody maintain their independence. It could be dealing with social isolation or the pandemic of Alzheimer's and the caregiver stress, and we're nowhere near being able to, first of all, Congress is not really recognizing it. And they aren't putting in the kind of money they should be in terms of disease prevention and management. And those kinds of things to create a healthier society and to manage those that end up in that part of the spectrum where they have poor health or get these wretched diseases like Alzheimer's.
Okay. Anybody else want to touch on it? That's right.
I feel like there are two sides of meeting the need. So in one respect, it's connecting people to the programs that are there. Right. And there are definitely people falling through the cracks, not connected to SNAP or to their local food pantry for various reasons. But then you also have to look at the people who are connected to programs and what is their daily life. Do they have enough to eat? Right. So for SNAP, for example, we have 75% is the USDA estimate of people who are eligible for the program in Montana. 75% actually participate. For seniors, it's much lower, just 1 in 3 seniors participate. So that's a decent for overall participation rate, but so many of them still aren't able to make it through the month on their SNAP benefits, that they're
Right.
also going to the food pantry, that they're still skipping meals. So it's helping, it makes a huge difference, but it could definitely be improved.
Okay.
And I'm going to answer from a Blackfeet tribe perspective, I guess, when you think about needs, and certainly in Blackfeet communities. When you look at Native communities, there's a huge data gap, right? You know, and we all know it doesn't matter whether you're going for money from the public sector or the private sector. If you can't substantiate your need, then you can't quantify anything. Right, you know, so part of that data gap, you know, comes from a variety of different sources. You know, we have, of course, government-funded healthcare, you know, that doesn't share information or anything else. You know, and so when you think about correlations to health and nutrition and how we might be able to show need to become eligible for many programs, whether that's in the private or the public sector, we don't have the data to actually substantiate that need, even though you can just walk down the street and you know that it's there, that need.
Well, thanks.
Just really quickly, here at Missoula Food Bank, we've been in this building since the end of May, and when you take away barriers like access, or when you take away barriers like parking and accessibility and being able to move around in a store, we've got expanded, our store area is expanded. We are serving many more people. There is not new hunger in Missoula, but we certainly are able to reach more people who are experiencing hunger, up to 1,000 more services every month.
Oh, wow.
Significantly, more so than we anticipated. I think that when we talk to families, you know, families are spending up to 65% of their monthly income just keeping a house over their head. So, you know, HUD standards are 33% of your income going to housing is considered affordable. And so what that gets to is wages. You know, when we talk about hunger is a poverty issue. It is food access relies on being able to have a living wage job. And so when we talk about nutrition programs, I think that talking about the economy and strengthening local food systems and being able to create living wage jobs, that has to be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank you all for being here, and I want to especially thank the panel for their comments and perspective. I very much appreciate you guys taking time out of a busy day. But most importantly, I just want to thank the folks here for the room and the gracious hospitality. So thanks to the food bank. So thank you.